too. I don't know.
An intervention.
I saw a picture, of pop figures. We both have some pop figures. I saw one that was this huge wall of pop figures, and the guy who made the post said, "And this is when I decided I wasn't going to be a Marvel completionist." I was like, you have like 490 pop figures. What's the other 11 or whatever that he is? Anyway, I don't know.
There's always one more, and it's stupid. The criteria I'll use, I'll just be like, oh, I don't need this one because it's got the, it depends on what kind of design it is. Sometimes they feel uncomfortable to wear, and I like to wear them. I don't collect them to like keep them in the plastic. So I like the ones that are comfortable to wear. He had a scratch and sniff one once, which was amazing.
Scratch and sniff t-shirts.
You weren't supposed to put it in the dryer though, and it went in the dryer. And
yeah, turns out everything smelled like fruity berry or whatever.
Smell like anything but shirt.
Listen, we cleared the decks. We pushed our other guest off the side of the railing, gone into a combine. This episode has been changed a little. It's Jason Falls. It's just Jason Falls.
You could easily fill a very fun day with just Jason Falls.
I talked to Jason Falls as recently as yesterday twice, and I would say that both times were good. I think what I really want to do is walk around telling everyone, well, the first one was so much better. You wouldn't even believe what I admitted to. But
I would believe that.
Yeah, I know you would. But you were there for at least parts of both shows, so it could have been.
Well, that's true.
Backpack Show. I was just thinking that people new to the Backpack Show. Hi, Deanna. People new to the Backpack Show will always wonder, why does he do that wobbly thing with the thing? Or
why does he interrupt Carrie every single time to show us the wobbly thing? These are questions people might have if
no one wants to know that. No one's curious why it is.
We bring you insights from usual sources so that you can succeed in the next 5 years. And so that Chris can interrupt me every single day with a heavy metal intro.
Yes. You know, what I also like to do is determine whose head is kind of bopping just a little when they're backstage, because that's, so it's a business insights, business success show. The idea is basically we're making it interesting by going around and finding people who are not your average marketing turd head. We all talk to the same people. Like sometimes we're on each other's shows. It's crazy. It's just a circle, right?
Jason Falls is a very unusual marketing turd head, if you will. I don't care for the term, but he has a background in PR, communications, sports, and he has a whole lot of fun with a bottle of bourbon in his hand.
Jason Falls, the beautiful thing about Jason Falls is that, name drop. So I was asking Seth Godin about how to get more speaking gigs way back in the day. And he said, well, what are they going to do? Hire you or hire an astronaut? Let me help you. They're going to hire the astronaut. And I was like, yeah. Well, Jason Falls is the kind of guy who doesn't get just picked up as marketing turd head. He gets picked up as guy who knows stuff. And it was interesting.
And he's funny.
And he's super funny. And he has a new book.
He has more than one book, but yes.
I know, but a new book.
Forthcoming book called Winfluence about influence marketing. He dropped the R, by the way, if you notice. It's a very subtle shift from influencer marketing to influence marketing, almost like he's from Boston. He dropped that R.
I thought it was like influenza.
Influenza marketing.
All right,
we got marketing, kid.
The South will have to be into this show before we start using our mass accents again. It'll be all over. Oh my gosh, Jason Falls. Hello.
How y'all doing?
There we go.
We asked him to amp up the Kentucky for y'all.
That's Southern enough for y'all.
I like Perfect.
It. You guys talk way too nicely about me. I'm not nearly as fascinating as you make me out to be.
Stop.
Can I say something that sound like a compliment, but it'll also sound like a put down at the same time?
I love those.
He specializes in those.
You and I and Tim Hayden at Get Ready to Live in Austin or whatever it was. You made a presentation at that event that it's in sort of my golden moments of watching a presentation. Now, there's two reasons it is. One is I almost can never sit still during a presentation. Yours was so interesting to me that I didn't move an inch.
Oh, that pisses me right off because you've easily gotten up during one of mine like 100.
No question. Times. And I walked out of Seth Godin after having lunch with the guy, after sitting in the front row. So, that's Jason really, really, I was like, oh my gosh. And I thought the second part of this is, hi, Fauzia, who sends us guests who show up.
Fazia, yay.
Yeah, she brings us great guests who actually show up on the right day. So Jason, not only did he have this incredible thing that I sat perfectly still, but it was so smart. And I was just like, I keep forgetting that he's not just fun and funny. And I want to start there because it's an unfortunate truth, Jason. Now, like if you were like drunk enough or something, you would admit to me that it's kind of tough being the funny guy when you also have things of substance you want to talk about.
Yeah, I think that's probably fair. But I also, I lead with humor a lot for a reason. It's I like to make people relaxed. I like to hear people laugh. If I, had my druthers years ago, I probably would have just been a stand-up comedian and that was it. It's just my way of having fun up there on stage. And I don't have fun if I'm just talking serious. I can get to the serious part, but I like to start out by lightening the load a little bit and just reminding everyone, hey, we got to have fun doing this or it's not worth doing. So, yeah.
Accents are good for ratings, Jason. Keep it up.
You want me to answer all the questions like my brother would? So, no. It's good.
I mean, there's
enough twang in there if you want, and we can roll through some accents because you guys have the Boston down pat, and down pat, and then I've got a couple that I can bring to the table. I do a pretty good Pittsburghese, if anybody knows what that is.
Go. So, yeah.
Well, the thing about Pittsburghese, you stress your O's, and the anything that's town down, it's dine. So it's you don't go downtown, you go downtown. I'm gonna go downtown, have a pierogi. We're going to get an icy light, wash the stillers.
This is like Pennsatucky right here. That's what we're getting.
It's a little bit like it. My dad lived in Pittsburgh when I was growing up, so I had a lot of exposure to the Pittsburghese accent.
My dad went to Harvard, and my mom was a townie, like out of the town, out of the movie The Town. So it's a really strange mix. But what's new right now that you're working on that no one's heard about yet that you're like really excited about?
Whew, man, we are, at Cornett, we're doing a lot of work with tourism, and it's a tough time to do tourism, obviously, because not a lot of people can travel. And so the local CVB Visit Lex has got a lot cooking in terms of, sort of creative campaigns to try to ease people's tensions and open up to the fact that Lexington, Kentucky is a great place to come because it's not a big city with a whole lot of people. You can come and you can canoe and kayak and you can go hiking and there's lots of things that you can still do to get out in the world. So we're doing a lot there. And we're actually getting ready to kick off, new brand campaigns for the family of bourbons that we work with. And so just a lot of work. We're very fortunate to have not slowed down much at all during the pandemic, which has been good.
Why are we dropping the R from influencer marketing? I need to find that out.
So yeah, I'm glad you asked. And good for you for pointing that out. The whole sort of impetus for this new book, which unfortunately doesn't come out until January, but today I launched a companion podcast for it. We can talk about in a second, but Winfluence is the concept behind that sort of label in my mind for this book and this podcast is that we just like the term social media about 10 years ago, we have developed this term influencer marketing, and it's pigeonholed the practice of that into a very limited array of people. I think when people talk about influencer marketing, they think Instagram and YouTube. They think paying someone with a big following online to, show my product, review, recommend my product. But influence marketing, if you take the noun, the person out of it and talk about the action of influence, now you're opening up the horizons to be able to talk about a lot of different things. You can talk about any type of persuasion. You're trying to influence audiences to take action. You're trying to influence audiences to think differently. So it brings in advertising. It brings in public relations. It brings in public affairs. And yes, there are online channels through influential people who have audiences online that are a big part of that. But the president of the local PTA or the president of the urban league in your city, those are also influential people, and they may not have any followers online. They may not be plugged into social media. So when I think about influence marketing rather than influencer marketing, I'm thinking about the practice, the action we're trying to implement here, which is influencing an audience. And I'm not so hyper focused on someone who's got an Instagram account. That can be a viable channel, but there's lots of others depending upon your goals.
So that's an important thing to know then, that people who call themselves influencers may not actually be that influential in the sphere you're trying to
Yeah,
break into.
it's a label, right? I mean, you can call yourself, you can be in a student film and call yourself a movie star, but you're not really a movie star, right? You're just someone who slaps that label on yourself. And there's a huge right now with brands, the shift that has been happening for the last couple of years in the marketing world, especially on the agency side of things. Brands are coming to agencies and saying, I no longer want to work with people who have big audiences. I want to work with people who have big impact. So they want the influence. They don't want the influencer. And so that's kind of the foundation of the whole book.
All right. And again, we're talking about a book that comes out a while from now. We're launching the podcast. How do people get to that podcast, by the way? You can go to jason.online/Winfluence podcast. Is that what you can do?
That's what you can do. And we launched this morning with 5 episodes. It's the feed exists. It's got some old, Jason Falls show and Digging Deeper episodes. It's a long technical story, but there's some archived episodes that are the other show. But this is a brand new show launched this morning. The first 5 episodes are live now, and it'll be a weekly audio only podcast. I'm not going to pepper another live stream in people's faces with this one. This is just me having a really deep conversation with someone in the influence marketing space each week. Started off this morning with Ted Murphy from IZEA, the CEO of IZEA. We had a really interesting conversation about sort of the whole history of influence marketing from the way we think about it today, because IZEA was really the first company that said, pay us to find influential people to pay to post things on the internet. And so that kind of got the snowball rolling. So we started off with Ted, and then Christy Samus from the Influencer Marketing Association, who also leads Real Clever, which is an agency in San Francisco. She is a guest on the second show. The third show is Adrian Parker, Global VP for Marketing for Patron Tequila, to look at influence marketing from a brand perspective as opposed to an agency or a software perspective. And then Tabitha Hawkins joined me for the 4th episode. She is the founder of the Association of Influencers and Content Creators. And so her organization is really about increasing diversity and equality, equal opportunity for influencers across the industry and across the space. We talked a lot about the potential unionization of influencers and all sorts of other topics in that episode. And then the 5th episode that's available today is Sam Fiorella, who actually wrote the original influence marketing book with Danny Brown. That's Sam's book. But that's several years ago. And his agency, Sensei Marketing, they are reverse engineering influence for their customers through branded communities. And the conversation there got really nerdy and really deep, but that's what the podcast is about.
Dave Delaney points out that link is case sensitive. So thanks for that, Dave. He also says you're making him crave bourbon. Because on the Backpack Show, we bring in comments and questions from our guests as well. Fazia in the audience points out that followers can be bought. People do that?
I want to make a comment. When I saw that scroll by, I just realized this. So there's a friend of mine who, I use friend loosely sometimes, but I have a friend who wrote a book once, maybe 2, but he has at least one in the book. And I happened to check out, for no reason I could think of, his Twitter profile. And he has 500,000 Twitter followers, like exactly 500.1K Twitter followers. Now I've survived as many robot cullings as I can. And also people are mad that I don't always talk about marketing. So I'm down to like 336 point whatever. Now I earned those the good old fashioned way, being on Twitter since 2006. And, just being sort of like a Tom's of MySpace for a lot of people for a lot of years.
Yeah.
And this guy had 500,000 followers. And all I thought was, no, you don't. And then it kind of points to the point, the influencers is a bot experience now. It is a nothing really happens in experience. Retailers for sure, B2C brands are so sick of it. They're so sick of giving away a wedding cake to try to see if you can get a few more wedding cake sales. This is the right time for this book and this podcast. I'm going to turn that into a question now that I've gotten that out of my system about the 500,000 guy. Here's my question. It's the worst host ever. The concept of the verb of it all. How do I or what do you look for, or how do you explain? Like, I want Johnsonville Brats to be my customer, and they're actually talking to me. We're in dialogues now, so this is real. I'm asking you. I want to get them to be like, whoa, Brogan made him buy a shit ton of sausages. Like, that's what I want. So what has to happen? You know, I mean, I guess the really basic storyline is you make them buy sausages, but like, what are you thinking? Like, and what's Jason Falls, the author, saying?
So in order to be a person of influence, not an influencer, ultimately you have to have a connection to an audience that's going to take your recommendation and for that type of product. Now, the challenge you, Chris Brogan, have is you don't create content around recipes, food, cooking, sausage, meat, pork, whatever, right? So that's not your bailiwick. So what you've got to do is you've got to find a way to speak to your audience with some degree of relevance and authority on that particular product or service. And it may be that, hey, I love Johnsonville. Is it Johnsonville Brats? Is that what you're talking about?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So I love Johnsonville Brats, and I personally do, but I love Johnsonville Brats. I don't really talk to you about food much, but here's what I'm doing, and Johnsonville Brats is supporting me in that and helping me do that. And so, there's that sort of association value that you can bring to the table because if I'm the CMO at Johnsonville Brats, I'm like, okay, Chris Brogan's got a lot of audience, but he's not. The relevance factor is a problem for me. So what I've got to figure out is how does his content make it relevant for his audience to want to buy my product. So that's the challenge that you have to overcome. And that can be done through content. It can be done through how you position your relationship. It can be done a lot of different ways.
Now that you've helped Chris with his sausage problem, I have a few more audience questions and comments to get to.
That's great.
Says, would it be great?
What happens after 4 more hours? What happens?
Go to the emergency room. We've talked about this. I can't help you with that. Deb wants to know, would it be good to get an influencer who could influence or get their people to listen and ultimately take action? So she's saying, in other words, like the same thing you're saying, influence is one thing. Calling yourself an influencer is something totally else. Getting people to spend money is particularly problematic, small amounts.
Her question hits the nail right on the head because that's ultimately what you're trying to do. Influence marketing, as opposed to influencer marketing, if you will. Influence marketing is about finding the channels, and it might be advertising as a channel. It might be that email is a channel, or it might be that Instagrammer or YouTuber is a channel because they have an audience that they can speak to. That it's leveraging those channels to motivate an ultimate target audience to do something or think something, differently than they think now, or behave differently than they behave now. So she hit the nail right on the head. If you hire someone who doesn't do that, they are not a person of influence. They are not influencing on your behalf. You can call them an influencer all day. Doesn't matter how many people they have following them online. If they can't motivate them to do something, they're not worth a brand's trouble.
Dave Delaney says you can find out how many bots are following you on Twitter. Go to twitteraudit.com/Dave Delaney.
And by the way, Dave, while Chris was asking that enormously long question, I fixed the case sensitivity on the Bitly link there.
Oh, you did? Because I fixed the link to make sure it would be
it's
the
fine.
same.
You can use the capital W now, and it works. I was tinkering over here doing that.
I love how you say W. Kara says this is always the way. When things get too big, they crash, and people go back to niche marketing that's more targeted and trustworthy. Kara is joining us from Scotland.
Awesome. Mm-hmm. And Kara's right, because this whole move toward micro and nano influencers is exactly that. It's hey, the Kardashians of the world. I've never worked with them. I'm sure they might be effective in some form or fashion, but that level of celebrity, which I don't even call them influencers, there's celebrities and then there's online influencers. But when you're working with that level, you're talking about reach and frequency. And that's an awareness play. It's not a conversion play. When you're trying to get people to spend money to, come visit your store, to download your thing, to pay for something, then you're talking transactional. And the more effective dollars are spent with those, sort of niche audiences, niche influencers that have smaller audiences, but have a much higher degree of trustworthiness within those audiences.
The Kardashians can't sell sausage, is what you're saying?
Probably not.
Deanna says subliminal message. So she says we should periodically just whisper,
buy sausage. That's the best ASMR I've ever had. Greg Narain, by the way, an incredible beer influencer, says customers are still your best influencers.
Absolutely.
Within a few hours of meeting Greg Narain, we were off buying beers. So that was an experience. we were doing a beer cast, and that's how I think of them now. So
Chip says it's not about macro or micro. It's about relevance to the audience. For an influencer, audience could be large or small.
That's absolutely true. I mean, there's plenty of influencers as we think of them today who, when they write about a product or service, and to be honest with you, when you do the math, the Kardashians are a great example. Now, I call them a celebrity, not an influencer. But if one of the Jenners or the Kardashians comes out and they're wearing a new outfit, or they have a new purse, or they're using new makeup that nobody's ever heard of before, the sales of that particular product are going to go through the roof. It's a byproduct of reach and frequency, probably more than it is influence, but they do have an impact on a certain portion of their audience. So
not the size of your audience, it's how you use it.
Absolutely. That's a great way to put it.
That's what I tell the kids. Hey, listen, speaking of influence and influencers, I should let you know that there are a couple sponsors for this old show. So our first and foremost sponsor is the nice folks at StreamYard. You could go to cbrogan.me/StreamYard to make a show just like this, only better. And then you can invite Jason on it, because then I'll have StreamYard and Jason will be there and everybody will be happy. And
you'll win with Winfluence.
That's right. Now, our other side is for authors. Like if Jason wasn't already like swimming in websites, which he is, he could go. He has a lot of websites. He's a man of sites. You could go to PubSite. You could go to pub-site.com.
If you need an author website, a website for your book, a publisher website, you can go to pub-site.com and you can make it yourself. It's super easy, or they'll actually make it for you. If you need it like so easy, somebody else does it, they'll do it for you. You get a 14-day free trial, pub-site.com. Some best-selling authors are already on there. It's really great for first-time authors, but it's not just for first-time authors.
Like Tom Clancy's on there. Like, let's not be like
Robin Cook.
Yeah, it's not the tiny guys. Don't be weird. You tiny guys can also go there, but
So if you've got a book in you, but you don't know how to build a website, go to pub-site.com.
Now, by the way, just one last thing about PubSite, and I'll let it go. Any idiot can make a website, like really can. And saying I make sites for authors is, you can make sites for left-handed plumbers. But PubSite is made by a bunch of people who are publicists for some of the most important authors in the world. And so they have a 20-year experience of getting your stuff in front of the right people. You might even say they are a Winfluence kind of people. So you can
they're the premier book PR firm, to be sure.
There you go.
Yeah.
They know what they're doing.
They are. There we go. That's our sponsors. Merry Christmas.
He's a man of sites.
You know who I'm not thinking about right now, by the way? I'm not thinking about our other guest. That's what I'm not thinking
feel
about.
like you are, though. I could be wrong.
I'm not saying swear words.
Everyone is an influencer, and Dave Delaney says quality over quantity, my friends. And scotch is better than bourbon, says Dave Delaney. Them's fighting words.
We're gonna have a row here, Dave.
You said row. You're dropping some major vocabulary words. Is that to compensate for the accent, Jason?
Well, Dave's from Canada via Ireland, so he understands that. So
he also looks super Irish, which is hilarious. I have to think that when he actually went to Ireland, people just talked to him as though he was a local.
Oh, yeah.
Assuming that
he's got the
ginger.
He's got the very Irish presence about him.
He really does. So everyone's talking to each other in the chat, which is one of my favorite things about the Backpack
That's how
show.
we know it's the right guest.
Our guests turn up and start talking. So Deb loves your sound bites today. Left-handed plumbers.
She came back from vacation. She's all, handled. And I think that she's just got all that energy. So
man, Fazia is so awesome. I could just talk about Fazia.
So Jason, back to the concept of Winfluence and what you're going to go deep on with. And by the way, what an awesome first guest, Ted Murphy. Ted Murphy's just a super guy. He's like you in that way, though. He's a guy that people think of as fun, gregarious, funny, and then forget that he's like a real deep thinker. That's a question to you about the way Winfluence may or may not be written about in your book, but also how you work and how you see it. Of course, we're attracted to the people that we're attracted to when it comes to like things like their smarts or whatever. We like funny people. So you follow a lot of comics, and Carrie loves smart people. And, so when you seek to influence, it's not always just the product, is it? It's that second hop over to the audience in that way of, you want to attract people that you're attracted to. Is there a place for that? Which is why influencers can't work so well.
Yeah, there is, but I think it actually works with the influencers that you choose, right?
Bye,
The
Dave.
people that you do connect with. A perfect example is, one of our clients at Cornett is Buffalo Trace Bourbon, and Buffalo Trace has a certain, stand strong is their sort of hashtag and their sort of vibe. They're a very powerful masculine brand, and the way that the sort of brand attitude and all of the pillars of the brand align, the one person that continued to stick out to Chris Comstock, who is the basically the senior marketing director for all of the Sazerac bourbons at Buffalo Trace Distillery, and Buffalo Trace Bourbon is what it is today, largely because of his leadership and work in the marketing department. But he told us a couple of times, man, the person who embodies this brand in a lot of ways is Joe Rogan. And so, he said, let's get a phone call. So we got a phone call. And now if you listen to the Joe Rogan Experience, from time to time, he'll be, sipping Buffalo Trace bourbon or some Buffalo Trace Distillery product with his guests and whatnot. And, it's not a big sponsorship. It's not an overt, we want you to tell people to drink Buffalo Trace. It's you align with our values and who we are and what we are. And we just want to make sure that we're sitting at the table together. And so it's a partnership with an influencer or a celebrity, podcast host, whatever. But again, it's not about an ad. It's not about a transactional thing. It's about building a relationship because there's alignment there. And those are the types of influence programs that I really enjoy trying to build myself for our clients, not just Buffalo Trace, but others, because I love the fact that what you're doing is you're building a long-term relationship with a partner that you are going to reap the benefits from, and they are going to reap benefits from you for, years. And so a lot of the influencer marketing tools and agencies are all about pay the influencer this much money and they'll post about you this many times. It's very transactional. And that can work for certain things. There's nothing wrong with that. I'm an old PR guy, by trade. So I like to build those relationships and have those connections over time, which can benefit you in dozens of ways that you never think about. If you're thinking about, I need to move this needle by this much by this date.
Dang, I just deleted the get off my lawn thing too. Just deleted it. Kara says, what's most important with an influencer, the personality and their likability or their knowledge that they have about the topic? So which brings more trustworthiness?
I think it depends, but I think I would lean toward knowledge in terms of building trustworthiness. And when I think of someone who is more trustworthy versus entertainment or personality, I think if you're in the B2B space and you're trying to move big transactions that have long lead times and have high dollar ticket prices, you want knowledge and trustworthy. The entertainment value isn't going to go very far when someone's spending a lot of money. If you have a lower cost item and or you're just trying to create awareness, that personality and energy might be what you're looking for. So it really all goes down to what's your goal. What are you trying to use influence marketing for? If it's creating awareness, buzz, get people talking about you, lean toward personality. If you're really trying to drive a transaction and a decision or change the way people think about something, you need to lean on that trustworthiness, someone who's got a lot of credibility within that space, because that'll help you accomplish your goal, I think, a little bit better than the jazz hands would.
We had NASCAR team owner Tad Geschichter on a little while ago, and he said, if you can race and win, that's great. If you can race and win and you're likable, we're going to make a lot of money.
That's
Jane Morehouse says, not for business, but I asked my Facebook audience to wish my nephew happy birthday yesterday, and he woke up to 150 well wishes. Now, see, I feel like that's a fun ask people would want to be part of.
Yeah.
So if you can translate that into something businessy, you could probably accomplish the same thing. But who hates kids and puppies? Nobody. They're obviously all gonna roll up and wish him a happy birthday. Fazia says nothing beats being a genuine fan, right? I mean, I wear Johnny Cupcakes t-shirts probably 75% of the time. So come on over. And everybody's saying goodbye to Dave. They're all very sad that he left. I don't know. And TJ Gamble of E-commerceaholic says, well, Buffalo Trace is speaking my language.
Handsome TJ Gamble, I'd like to say, by the way. I think that's what we all agree to call him.
This is an antique. This is an antique, which is what he's mentioning, but he does mention Weller. This is single barrel, and you can tell I've enjoyed this bottle. So.
Yeah.
TJ has a pretty fantastic background for video stuff. Kara thanks you for your answer. And Deb says it starts out as transactional sometimes, but becomes a relationship if there's trust on both sides.
Absolutely. There's an influencer we've worked with over the time for Buffalo Trace too. Derek Wolf at Over the Fire Cooking, and it started out as, let's just do a sponsored post and see if there's some, I guess, to use a 10-cent word, synergy. Let's see if there's something there with your audience and our audience, and there was. And so that, sponsored post or two evolved into, we actually went in and did an entire series of a web, video series of Over the Fire Cooking with Buffalo Trace, where he would cook, over the fire, and we brought in other influencers as guests. So we laid these influencers on top of each other to, make this, show really kind of fun and holistic for Derek. And it, helped him up his, production quality, and it helped us get exposure and sort of partnership with him and his audience. And it's worked out really well for both of us.
TJ looks like Jim Gaffigan. I don't know who that is, but I'm willing to take your
comedian
word for it.
Jim Gaffigan.
Yeah.
That's a weird. Okay.
Yeah.
Jim just went off on a certain sitting U.S. president, which has been really interesting. Jim is known for being a very sidelines, very polite, super Midwestern kind of guy, whose like most controversial joke is about eating Hot Pockets. And, for him to go off, it went. And,
well, he's also a contributor to CBS Sunday Morning too. So there might be some repercussions from that he didn't expect. But yeah, he had a nice little rant this week.
We just talked to David Litt yesterday, a former Obama speechwriter, and he set off an international incident just by inserting Kenya into a sentence at the White House Correspondents' Monologue, because what was it? He said they both ended in Syria and Kenya.
Syria, and
and so that didn't go over, I guess, because it was something like, hey, we thought things were bad here. And then we took a look at what's happening in Syria and Kenya, and people in Kenya were like, hey. And
so they started scrambling up their go-karts and, they started getting some, bigger rocks. I don't know.
So you don't want your influencers like too high profile, because then everything they say is scrutinized to the point where your association with them then is scrutinized. Hey, you.
So, yeah, I just did it to myself because, some Kenyan's going to be mad at me now.
Probably.
Greg says, by the way, every influencer represents three great things: domain expertise, creative agency, and audience. I love that when agency's used in that form. I love it so much. It reminds me why the word exists.
Yeah. And I love the fact that he pointed that out, because I think I wrote something recently. I don't remember where, probably on my blog, but I wrote something recently where I really think that one thing that will help sell through influence marketing to executives and clients and higher ups and whatnot is to, again, stop focusing on the fact that they are an influencer and start focusing on the fact that they are a creator, and that they are going to provide you with content. And if you negotiate it the right way, you can use that content. And it's not just about them posting on their channel to their people. It can be you collaborate on using their creativity, their creative vision and capabilities to do something really nice and magical for your brand. So when an executive hears that, who doesn't really know anything about marketing, but knows everything about, the spreadsheets and the zeros and the ones and the reds and the blacks, those particular individuals can say, oh, you mean they're like freelancers? We're going to pay them and we're going to get something in return. Then they start to go, okay, that makes more sense to me. So it's a good way to translate that.
Deb says Jim was as surprised as anyone when his comments went that far.
Yeah.
Yes. So anyway, that point though is, I mean, how many different variations have we been in where we've had to say to someone, no, this is really worth it. And they're like, well, show me on my spreadsheet where that's worth it. And you're right. If you can't show it there, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, well, I like pilot programs for influence, anything really, because you've got to show that it works before anybody gives it any credence. They think when you say influence or influencer, they think Kardashians, and they're like, that is a waste of time and money.
Yeah.
So if you want to prove otherwise, you need to do it like in a microcosm, and then you can scale it up.
And so here's an interesting example, and I'll probably try to make up a number or two here to make real sense to people. So an influence program that I've been involved with as an influencer in the marketing technology space in the last few years was with IBM Watson. Now, the IBM Watson marketing team, obviously it's IBM, they have a budget and whatnot, but let's just say you're a technology company, you're not IBM Watson, and you know that you have to go to a trade show and you have to staff the booth, and you're going to want to post social content from that booth, and you're going to want to, network and meet certain, people, potential clients at that particular trade show. What if instead of, paying thousands of dollars to send 3 or 4 staff members out with your, sales lead to this particular conference, you took the budget that you would spend on 1 or 2 of those and hired an influencer to be with you at that, at your booth, to help staff the booth, to live tweet and do videos and do content from your booth, which you were going to have to pay somebody to do anyway. Why not have someone who also brings with them not only great creative capabilities that maybe you don't have internally, but also an audience of their own that they can sort of parlay for you in that particular experience. There's lots of ways that you can think about leveraging the creative output of an influential person and using that person's audience at the same time. And so it really just takes sitting down and thinking, how can we do this in a creative way? And if you can say to the CFO, look, instead of, spending $10,000 to take these 2 people out there with us and have them, do this stuff behind the scenes, we're going to spend $12,000 to pay an influencer, fly them out, etc. They're going to do all the stuff the other 2 people were going to do, but we also have all this additional exposure because of it. That's another good way that you can probably sell those things through.
And that you have a 90-degree segue? Or you just
do have a 90-degree segue. I wanted to ask you about Falls Off the Rocker.
Oh, Lord. Oh, man.
It's a little throwback. Jason used to do a humor column. Falls Off the Rocker.
Look at this. I think I have. This is an old folder. There's my college roommate Brad Wilson drew that cartoon of my old column, and I tried to do. This is an old folder. I tried to get it syndicated and sell it to a bunch of newspapers. After the first newspaper it appeared in fired me because they didn't like my sense of humor. But basically it was like Dave Barry with an edge. I had a column, I think once, it might actually be in here. Like here's some headlines from my old newspaper column writing days. What do you think I am? French. Bell South has no listing for customer service. That was a fun one. PETA protests KFC. Kentucky declares war. That was a good one.
Nice.
This is one of my favorites. Citizens beware. Government officials are on the loose. Escape from Tijuana. Memoirs of my drug running days. Like this is just, it was Dave Barry, but with a little bit of an edge, and it was irreverent and fun. And it was so fun that the Appalachian News Express in Pikeville, Kentucky, my little hometown, fired me. And the publisher of the damn paper was my godfather. That's how terrible it was, apparently.
That's just saying it all. Listen, Chip Griffin asked the question, was that print master? Because he's a nerd. He needs to know that.
It might have been. I don't know.
Who knows? And Nancy, love that idea. Jason, Nancy also said, absolutely makes sense, Jason. So everybody's
but you're right. Not about Falls Off the Rocker. We should clarify.
Yeah, please don't encourage that animal. We don't need to bring that guy back out.
I don't even know what. So listen, we got to do a couple more things before we get out of here. So let me click some buttons here. First, I want to get a person of the day, and I had somebody in mind because I hadn't seen him in a little bit, so it was nice to run into. But let's see. I was also going to make a comment. There we go. So Greg Narain gets to be our person of the day. By the way, that means that you are entitled to 1 apple if you can find one, acquire one, or buy one.
Person of the day, sponsored by
pub-site.com.
Get your author website.
Yeah. And by the way, what an incredible group of people there at FSB Associates behind, because every one of their guests shows up when we invite them and they say yes.
They don't just show up. They show up with valuable insights, an interesting background, and a body of work that we can talk about that is of value for our audience.
Now, look, one last question from this gentleman with a similar beard. Was there bourbon involved in the column?
I can neither confirm nor deny. Those columns were most definitely bourbon laced, I'm sure.
Call that a big yes.
All right, so we're at this part of the show where I got to ask you a question, which is what goes in your backpack. The idea is that there is a metaphorical backpack that we all need because the world is crumbling all around us. It's chaos, dogs and cats living together. And we need to know if in a world where we don't have any solid ground to build on, we have very limited resources, what would you add to the backpack for people to strive and thrive in the next 5 years?
I got a whole it's over here. I got a whole shelf of that's 1792 right there, and then back over here I've got some Eagle Rare and some Buffalo Trace, and yeah,
you're gonna be like a wounded gazelle clinking through the desert with your backpack full of bourbon.
Well, but I'm gonna be the life of the damn party. Right? So people are gonna want to hang out with me because my backpack has the good stuff. So that's and that's probably as important to me as being able to survive. So there you go.
Was there bourbon in the column?
Yes, we answered that one. So, listen, I don't know if you noticed this or not, but StreamYard sponsors this show. See brogan.me/StreamYard, and PubSite does pub-site.com. I don't know if you know that. Jason Falls. There's something we do a little different on this show, and even a little different, I would say, than when you were last here. And it was an idea that I got from my grandmother. What she said, and we forgot to tell you this beforehand,